So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we've got another great guest. He's an awesome actor from an awesome show. He's Erik Valdez. Erik, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Happy to be here, man.
Oh, do you know what? Superman and Lois is absolutely rocking it in the UK, and season 2 in the US is doing even better. I mean, I can't wait for season 2 to come over in the UK. I've had access to season 2, so I'm all up to date, which I'm just so excited about. I really am. But before we start talking about this awesome show, so I'm sure the fans will want to know, the last 2 years have been quite difficult times, unusual times. How have you kept positive throughout the last 2 years and you know, keep moving forwards?
Well, I mean, man, the good thing about the last couple of years for me personally is I've had my family up here with me. You know, when we left LA in the middle of a pandemic to come film a show, we didn't know what was going to happen. My wife at the time was working, but was able to work remotely, which was great. And so her, my son, my dog all came up here with me. And so in the beginning stages during isolation, that was super helpful to have them around. And then, you know, after that, we were in a bubble within the show as well. I mean, for the first season, I don't think we interacted with anyone outside of our own cast, just because we all knew the responsibility that they kind of set on our shoulders. If we got sick, you know, not only did we not want to get sick for health reasons, et cetera, but we get sick and production shuts down. And there's a lot of people relying on us to keep the machine moving. And, you know, we took that responsibility pretty seriously. And, you know, there were minimal downtimes season 1, minimal this season. Things have opened up a bit more restriction wise, et cetera. It looks like there's some light at the end of the tunnel, I hope. And, you know, this is not to negate any of the loss that anyone's experienced during this. It's terrible, and it's hit all of us in different ways. But it is nice to start seeing some sense of quote unquote normal life again. Being able to go out and you know, for me, aside from having family and all of that, just being in nature, that was one of the most therapeutic things for me. That and music are, you know, two of the things that get me by in anything in life. So thankful for being close to nature and beautiful places up here in BC and having music.
And it's really nice to hear that you had your family with you, because throughout this whole pandemic, I think family is so important to have them close and to have them near, because they are your backbone, and they're what gets you through things. Because I've got two little girls, and through this pandemic, literally, children are so resilient, and it's been quite nice because, yeah, it has affected them socially, but for as a family unit, it's been quite nice because we've got to spend a little more time with them because of obviously restrictions, and we've had more opportunities, you know, to grow with them more. So I ask the majority of my guests, why acting? Because it's probably one of the hardest professions, the most demanding, that it's got ups and downs, and it's probably it can be one of the most insecure professions to have as well, because you go from one, you know, contract or one show to the next. So why did you choose this profession over something else?
Over like banking or accounting or something that
yeah,
at least had a path of sorts and probably a future, because it's never going away. I guess the short answer is I've always been a dreamer, but more so I've been a doer. I tell people all the time that the anecdotal answer to this is my two passions in life are motorsports and entertainment. And so all I ever wanted to do in life was race cars and entertain people. And those are two of the most ridiculously challenging, stupid, if you want to call it, paths to pursue. But again, we don't do either of those based on some sort of laid out path and, you know, an end result. The journey is what it's all about, and the passion. And so for me, it wasn't a matter of, you know, what would I do if I wasn't doing this? It's funny. I always go to music because I love music as well. There's a song by a country singer named Luke Combs, and it's called "If I Wasn't Doing This." And in the chorus, it basically talks about, you know, if I wasn't doing this, if I wasn't on Superman and Lois, if I hadn't been lucky enough to make a career out of this, I'd still be acting. I'd be doing theater in the community. I'd be doing it because it's a creative outlet. And so for me, all along, it wasn't even a question. It was just something that I was
Mm.
going to do and to continue to pursue. And trust me, those tough days, there were plenty of those. Sleeping in a car, not knowing how I was going to pay rent. I mean, it sounds like a cliche sob story, but it was my reality, and I just never wanted to give up.
Mm. I suppose when you talk about the hardships, you've got to really love the craft. You've got to love what you're doing because it's not an easy journey to take. And I hear the same story from other guests that the fact that it was so hard at the beginning. I mean, how hard is it to make it in this business? I mean, is it literally dog eat dog? Are you competing all the time?
Yes and no. The reason I say yes and no is because to me it's not necessarily a competition per se. Yes, there are millions of people out there that would love to be sitting in my shoes right now, and that is not lost on me. And I was that person years ago that wanted to be right here where I am. And I think the good thing is to always remember that and always stay hungry, but always remember that, at some point in life, you were that person that wanted to be right here where you are now. And so that's always kind of been my motivating factor there. But it is difficult, and you are in competition with others per se. You're
Mm.
auditioning against others, etc. But in my opinion, there's no, there's varying levels of things that people can bring to a character. There's so many talented people out there, and the reality is, you're going to hear 99 not no's for every one yes in this industry. And as you move a little further along in your career, maybe it's 75 no's to 25 yeses. The ratio changes a bit, but it's still an industry full of no's. And to me, it's not about somebody else beat me out of a part or I beat somebody else. It's they were right for that. Whatever they
Mm.
brought layer wise to this character, that's something that I couldn't do, or Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or any of these guys couldn't do. It's that individual thing that
Mm.
is kind of what makes what we do beautiful. It's individuals.
Mm. And you definitely landed on your feet with Superman and Lois because the part of Kyle Cushing is just awesome. Literally, you couldn't wish for a better part because it's so it's challenging to watch. It really is. And I've got to say, the last episode that was on Tuesday, I was just waiting for you
Mhm.
to appear on screen. Literally, I wanted to see you on screen because of all the past storylines. It was like literally, you can't leave us with not being on screen. So it was quite nice to see you at the end there with your daughter Sarah. So we've been waiting since 1997 for a Clark and a Lois series. So Dean Cain was in the last one, and we've waited a long time. And wow, it's worth waiting for because this show was absolutely amazing. Well, it is amazing. I mean, when the show came across your lap, what were your first thoughts? How was it presented to you, and what did you think about it?
I was in Ontario, Canada, working on another project at the time, and had the pilot, sent to my email, and the sides for this character, and immediately I read it that night when I got to my hotel, and I was like, oh man, first of all, this is, I didn't grow up like the biggest, in comic book stores every week kind of guy, but I mean, who didn't love Superman and superheroes growing up? And so for
Mm,
me to even have the possibility of being a part of this project come my way was already a win. And when I read the script and I read this character, man, from day one, Kyle resonated with me on so many levels. I've said this before in other interviews and stuff, but I know Kyle. I grew up around these Kyles, even though we're very different
mm,
in a lot of ways, he and I. I was born and raised in Texas, and I grew up around a lot of small town folk that there's a different mentality, and it's not better or worse than anyone in a big city, et cetera. It's just you're a product of your raise and your environment and stuff. And so a lot of the struggles and the coping mechanisms that are involved in Kyle and this character were very real to me from an observation standpoint. You know, watching people, my own friends, my dad himself grew up on a farm and didn't have a lot of money and kind of grew up in this small town before branching out, et cetera. And so I knew a lot about that, and I in my mind already had ideas of where I could take this character and the writers could take this character, and so from day one it was really enticing to me, and as it all kind of played out, it just worked, and going back to what I said before, this was one of those things where I think this was just meant to be for me, you know. And I do love what you were saying and appreciate, what you were saying as an actor, a character this challenging and, with all these layers and stuff is really fun to play. And there's so many subtleties to it too. He's the nuances and stuff here and there that are interweaved. And that's hats off to the writers and to Todd and everybody for creating that as well. And it's just, man, it's every day, every episode is just a new kind of wave of emotion and a new challenge.
I mean, were you aware of the anticipation from the fans before this came out? Because this when this show was announced, literally the internet went crazy. Because obviously we saw Superman in Elseworlds, the crossover events, and obviously when it got announced, all the fans went crazy. Did you notice that online? Did you notice, the buzz that was going around the show before you started it?
Oh, I did. And because of delays due to the pandemic, et cetera, I knew about my involvement in the show well before, the rest of the world did, and knew exactly what was going to happen and everything. So it was hard to stay tight-lipped and see some of the comments and not be able to chime in on them. But I mean, we knew going into it, kind of the blessing and a curse of doing a show like this is, there's going to be a built-in fan base from day one. Whether or not they're going to stick around is the challenge, right? And so when you're involved in such an international, global property like this, it's not hard to get eyeballs on it. It's really hard to keep people invested. And I think that is, one of the things that we've loved seeing the most from the fans is the fact that, they were excited. And for the most part, I think that we've kind of lived up and delivered on their, the hype and their excitement, especially in the UK. When I started looking at the numbers we were doing in the UK when we premiered over there, and I think January it's mind blowing. I mean, the fan base over there is fanatical. I haven't been back to the UK. I don't know, it's probably been 6 years now. I can't wait to get over there just to go visit, but also to now be a part of something that is such a big deal over there.
That would be awesome. And I've got to say as well, talking about having to be tight-lipped, I met Tyler literally just after the crossover event, and when it was being rumoured that there was going to be a show, and literally he wasn't saying anything. I was trying to get it out of him. I was like, wink twice for yes, one for no, but he wasn't saying anything. I mean, how serious are the NDAs on this show? Have they got you literally tied down?
I mean, they do, but at the same time, I think all of us are so involved in the show that we don't want to leak things early. There's no excitement in that. I think we just understand, legal contracts aside, we just understand that this is such a precious thing that we get to be a part of, and putting info out there early is, I don't know, it takes away from it, I think. So I think all of us have that same mindset. So being tight-lipped about stuff is something we're used to at this point.
And I've got to say, the writers on this show, I think, do an absolute stellar job. They really do, because this series, I've got to say, is so much more real than any other CW series. It tackles subjects that has never been in a superhero sort of series, and I think it's fantastic. And your character is again very vulnerable at times. You can see that vulnerability, and obviously what he goes through. I mean, what has been your favorite part in playing Kyle? Have you got a moment that you actually will always stay with you?
there's a handful of moments. I'll have to think about one particular that stands out, but in general, kind of what you just alluded to, the vulnerability. To me, that's where he and I are pretty similar. I've always been a pretty emotional, pretty vulnerable person, and in my opinion, that is arguably one of the strongest traits humans can possess. It often gets taken advantage of. It often gets, misunderstood or perceived as weakness. And I would argue quite the opposite. So to be able to see, a character like this who's pretty brash on the exterior and who, because of, the environment he was raised in, this small town, being, of Latino descent in kind of middle America, there's challenges with that, right? And it kind of forms this hardened shell that we see in Kyle. But to be able to also, portray those moments of vulnerability with his daughters, with Lana, even when through all the ups and downs. To me, that's that part, since it's relatable to me, is great, but it's written so well that you don't ever really see just one side of Kyle, and he's not a cliche version of this or that or whatever. Again, it goes back to kind of those nuances and those layers. And anytime you get an opportunity to play a character with this many layers, it's great.
I mean, talking about layers, so your characters through season 1 and so far season 2, you've dealt with alcoholism, being a supervillain, which is awesome, and obviously adultery. I mean, which has been the most challenging to portray on screen for you as an actor?
Probably the latest subject of adultery. It's just, to me, that is, it's tricky because as an individual, that's something that, obviously is I would never do and is not right by any means to me. But you also can't fault it. It happens in real life, and you can't fault human beings for wavering here and there. There's reasons behind things. And I think the hardest part is just, the emotion that you have to sit with when you're doing stuff like that. When you're, the alcoholism is tricky in and of itself, but, to me, not quite as difficult. The supervillain stuff was actually way more fun. Then it's challenging in its own right, because you're playing a different character and you're going to this kind of, manic psychotic state, which is fun. But at the end of the day, you can kind of be done with that and go back to the trailer, change clothes, and drive home, and you're good. When you're dealing with stuff like this, a husband and wife that have been together since high school, that have built a family, that are in love, and he still truly, deeply loves Lana. It's tough when you're having to film these scenes and, the emotional stuff, and trying to also, not lose too much of his pride, because Kyle's a pretty proud person. So it's not a full-blown tears down your face, moment. Although there was a really great moment that we shot that had some of that didn't make the cut in episode 6, I believe it was. One of our writers, Adam, on Twitter, even alluded to that. He's great person to follow on Twitter, because he gives a lot of the behind the scenes details, and he knows everything about the Superman mythology too. So Bitter Script Reader on Twitter is who Adam Mallinger is. But he even alluded to that after the episode, that there was this montage that kind of wrapped up a few of the things, not just the Kyle storyline of that episode, but there was this scene in a truck where, part of this montage where the camera kind of wraps around, and it's just Kyle sitting by himself after the quinceañera in the truck, and he just has this massive emotional breakdown, which was very hard to film. And then the fact that it didn't make the cut was like, oh man, I literally had to go do that, and then I was just in my feelings for like 3 hours trying to come down from that, and it didn't even make the cut. But all that is to say that that's the challenge of it, is that, we as actors, we're playing pretend, but to make it real, we've got to fill it. And so we're sitting with those emotions, and oftentimes, especially for me, it just doesn't turn off right when you're done with the scene. So, there's several weeks there where I'm at home and my wife's like, you okay? And I'm like, you read the script? Like, she reads with me. So I'm like, I'm okay, but this is difficult to process. So.
but it's real, and that is what I like about it. It doesn't skirt around anything, it addresses the subjects head on. And I've got to say, the end of episode 4, before we had a 2-week break, I've got a picture here on screen. So this is the barmaid in question, and I've got to say, the moment when she touches your hand in that bar, I was like, oh, this is like gone on to another level. This has changed, Kyle has been naughty, and it's another layer to that character. But me personally, I think that Kyle is probably beating himself up more than anything, because, as you said, Kyle comes across as a very proud man. He's obviously proud of who he is and what he does, and his job and his family. So knowing that he's done this is killing him inside, and you can see that on screen and how you portray him. I mean, how do you prepare as an actor for these subjects? I mean, do you do research? Do you take from personal experiences? As you said, you've been around people that were quite similar.
Both. Depending on the subject matter, a lot of it is, there's always research involved, and it's strange. Like I've always gone through life kind of like this. So I'll be out in public or whatever, and I'm not eavesdropping, but I'll catch conversations, or I'll watch people's actions, or I'll just sit and see how certain things are taking place. The physicality of the way a person walks, or things will catch my eye. And for years, I just wondered, like, why am I just super nosy? Like, what is this? I'm not being rude about it, but why is all this stuff catching my eye? And I think now I look back at it, and it was, just pulling from stuff and putting in a tool bag that would later come into play with what I do for a living. And so I think a lot of it is observation, which is character research. So going on every single day of life. But then for specific things like this, some stuff is pulled from personal experience. And although I've personally never been involved with an adultery thing, I got close family that has, and I went through it, secondhand. And so I was able to kind of pull from that. And I think that also added to the emotional element of it, and the challenge of it is kind of having to relive some of that, albeit in a different manner. So yeah, that's always involved in everything that I do, and all the character choices.
Mm. And fingers crossed, it all works out for Kyle, because I feel sorry for him, and I'm behind him 110%. I want him to redeem himself. I really do. So let's talk about the special effects and the action in this show, because one of the things that it's had positive feedback straight away was about the special effects and the action scenes. And when you became a supervillain, I've got a lovely picture here of you as a supervillain. Look at that! Look at that cheeky grin! Look, you absolutely loved that. I could tell. I mean, what was it like to film those scenes for the action side of things, and what was it like to actually see the finished article? With all the special effects, because that must have been off the charts.
Oh, it really was. I mean, I've worked in different versions of like motion capture and stuff before, so the kind of the process involved wasn't new to me per se. The scene is acted out in real time, but then you go and like you sit in this trailer. Usually it's a room, but in this trailer they bring to set with an array of like hundreds of cameras, and you hold different positions and facial expressions and stuff. It's really awkward in the moment because they're like, "Oh, do this," and you just gotta like sit there like that for a moment or whatever. But these cameras take all of these images, and then through an algorithm of sorts in a computer, that's how you're able to add in heat vision and things like that. So going through the process, it's always fun and quirky and unique. Doing the that particular scene you just showed there, when Superman comes in and kind of pummels Kyle through the back of the barn, which is like a blink and you miss it moment in the scene. Yeah, that right there, exactly. All of those little things were great on the day, because you get to kind of mimic just little subtle things, like with the heat vision, like a little forward motion with your head. Super subtle, but that comes into play with the effects team and how they portray that coming out of the eyes. and then getting pummeled by Superman and pulled through the barn. I was actually, on a rig of sorts. And Rob Hader, our stunt coordinator, is awesome, and he knows me. Every time it's like, hey, can I do this? And 99% of the time he's like, yeah, you sure you want to do this? I'm like, absolutely. I love doing my own stunts. I think there's only been one time where they wouldn't let me do something just because of the risk involved. But I love doing stuff like that. So getting to like be pulled on this rig and everything is fun. But then to your point, when you see the final result and what our VFX team and everything, has put out there, it's mind blowing, especially for a television show. I mean, a lot of people, they always put it down to like budget, right? Oh, well, this show must have a lot more budget, or has way little, budget here and there. Partly true. We're all under the constraints of timeline, right? So we're definitely not, the VFX are not going to be on par with a $300-400 million budget feature that, aside from budget, also has 3 years to complete. We've got to turn an episode around in 90 days, thereabouts. So the stuff that our team is able to do with the television budget, with the television schedule, man, I mean, I don't even want to use that as like an excuse, because it's so good it doesn't need an excuse. But that's my point, is you see these things and it's like, wow, knowing that they're able to deliver that level of visual effects in that amount of time, it's mind-blowing. We've got an amazing team all the way around. And just to add to that, I know I'm long-winded with answers, but our art department, everything too, a lot of these sets, some stuff is done on green screen, of course, but a lot of these sets are built practically, and then there's VFX over top of it. And I mean, it's just, every little detail is just incredible, and the way that they work with each other is awesome.
Well, the whole town apparently is purpose built. It was all built for which is awesome to see. I think we need to, I suppose, appreciate and give a nod to the people behind the camera as well, because they all do an 100%. Awesome job, and every single person is a cog to that machine that makes everything possible, from the writers, special effects, cameras and makeup and everything like that. And you can so tell that it's such a tight-knit team because of what it produces, which is great. And the other thing I like about this show is that there's no small characters. Literally, no. Every character in this show has got an awesome storyline, and not one person stands out, because you would automatically think Superman and Lois would stand out. And don't get me wrong, they do, but there are other characters that get raised up, which I think's awesome, like yours and Lana and Sarah as well, which I think's awesome. So it's a nod to them. So I mean, obviously, with everything going on with Kyle, do you think that Kyle will redeem himself with everything that's going on? I mean, obviously you can't probably divulge anything, but personally, would you want Kyle to redeem himself, and what path would you like Kyle to go on?
Oh man, that's going to be a tricky one to answer. I mean, in short, yes, I want Kyle to redeem himself. I think we all do. Like you said, it is a great testament to the writers, especially in a situation like this, where I get so many comments on social media, et cetera, where people are like, man, I hate that Kyle did this, but I feel for him, and I want him to fix this. I want him to come around. I love Lana and Kyle together. They gotta come back. So that is awesome, because it's very easy for a character to go down a dark road like this, and somebody be like, screw that guy. He deserves it, blah, blah, blah. But that's, again, the way that everything's kind of written and stuff is awesome. So yes, I want there to be some redemption. I think there will be some redemption. Where that leads, I don't know. And that's not even me just skirting around things. I mean, we have ideas. I talk to Todd regularly and the writers regularly, and we all have ideas of what we want to happen and whatnot. But there's so many things that it's constantly evolving in television, for a variety of reasons. Storylines intertwine with one another, and an idea pops up in the writer's room, and it's better than the last idea, so they run that way, even though you had planned on going this way. And so I think we'll see some redemption of sorts. What that looks like and when that happens, what that timeline looks like, couldn't tell you.
And do you get creative freedom as well? You mentioned just then about talking to the writers, because obviously you are Kyle. You're living that character. I mean, do you get any creative freedom on set? You know, to maybe change a few things and how you portray him.
I do, and I will say it. What's great about everything that we do, it should always be a collaborative process, right? Music, television, film, all of that stuff. All too often, in television and film, the actors get the credit. In music, the artists, the singers get the credit. But there are, there's writers on both ends. There's producers on both ends, music and television and film. There's all of these people that work together to create the final product. And so it should always be a collaborative effort. I will say that it isn't always that way. I've had great experiences for the most part in Hollywood, but there are certain shows, certain, projects where writers, producers, directors have a vision, and that's what it's going to be. So, if a writer comes to director, say, and wants to change something, there may be some resistance. Or if an actor, has a line that they're kind of bumping on, they want to say it a different way. Some writers are very precious about their stuff, and we have to respect that. But thankfully, with our group, it's a massive collaboration, and everybody's open, and nobody has an ego. And so we all want the same thing, which is the best final product, right? So if I do have an idea, per se, I'll pitch it. If it makes sense, we go with it. If it doesn't, and I have a conversation about it with somebody, I'm like, I get it. Now I understand why it was written this way, or why, with a director, because it's different directors every episode, they come in with an idea, and we can't be so precious to be like, oh, well, I've been doing this show for how many episodes and you're just now coming in. I've seen that happen with actors before, and that's a bad approach. You want to respect the director's vision, have an open dialogue about it, and we've had that for the entirety of the show. There is moments where I have a big improv background, so I don't ever just ad lib things and change dialogue completely on the fly. But for example, a lot of the Spanish that's spoken is in the moment. With both Indy, Sarah, and I, a lot of that stuff just happens. And the great thing is, in television, which is what I love, versus film, is writers get to see this, and so their writing evolves too, and so they'll end up writing certain scenes either in Spanish, or guides us in a situation where we're able to do that, or a scene ends a certain way on paper, but there's moments that happen after, and the director lets the camera roll, and some of that makes it in too. So it is a very healthy balance of collaborative effort on all levels, I think.
And again, that's what makes the show great. It obviously is quite a collaborative effort there. And I've got to give a shout out to Indy Navarrete that plays Sarah Cushing, because she's an awesome character. She plays your daughter, and she's a great human on screen and off screen. She's such a good role model, and definitely a role model that I would love my daughters to look up to, because she posts some amazing stuff. I mean, what is it like being a dad on screen? Because you're a dad in real life, but is this preparing yourself for when your little one becomes a teenager and starts to cause a bit of trouble?
It definitely is. I mean, the ironic thing, I have one child, my son, but he's got three and another cousin on the way. He's going to be surrounded by girls. So I have two nieces that are now, one of them will be going into high school next year. The other one is just a few years behind, going into junior high. And then my other niece is 5 months younger than my son, and then there'll be another new one after that. So I've had some experience secondhand with girls and with the aging process, because I've known my older nieces. I mean, my wife and I have been together for almost 10 years, so I've known them since they were younger than my son is now, and I've watched them evolve and learn from that. But it's funny, both my wife and I have this conversation. Indy was actually over at our house last night. She literally is like my daughter, who in real life, who I constantly find myself. Last night she brought a thing of food and put it in the microwave, and and she went to do something else, and I already had it out of the microwave with a spoon and stuff ready for her, and she's like, okay, Dad. Like, I just
That's awesome.
inherently do things like that. But she'll also, on her end, like, she'll just come over and say, hey, can I come hang? Yeah, so she'll come over, eat dinner, sit on the couch, play on her phone, and then she'll go home. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is what it'll feel like as an empty nester one day, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a great dynamic that we have, you know, with all my castmates really, but especially the, you know, we call them Los Cushings, the Cushings, with Lana, Sarah, Kyle, but off screen, you know, Emmanuel, Indy, and myself, we just have such a great rapport, and they all get along with my wife. So it's all real. The chemistry and everything is real.
Oh, that is awesome. I'm trying to get Indy on the show. I tried to get her on last season. I got Alex Garfin on the show, and he is like literally dynamite. He doesn't stop still for 5 seconds.
The energy is, yeah.
Honestly,
I wish I had that energy nowadays.
I know.
Just
I know. It's like just young'uns, eh? But talking about directing, have you got any plans on directing any episodes? Because the last one was directed by a lady that's actually from up the road from me. She's from about a couple of miles from me, Elizabeth Henstridge, that was in Agents of Shield. I mean, have you got any plans to direct any episodes?
100%. I don't know when that'll be. I want to make sure that I am 100% ready. I've dabbled a little bit with directing. I've produced a little more than I have directed. But my whole thing is, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well, or at least to the best of my efforts. You know, it can be judged out there however it's judged, but I don't want to go into something halfway. So I definitely have aspirations for that. Todd knows that, you know, everybody knows that, and they're open to it and will nurture me however possible. You know, I shadow people, even days when I go in and I film like one scene and then I'm off, I'll hang out sometimes. And it's a little different in the world of COVID. They don't really want too many people just hanging around. It's a little different with us. We can, you know, as cast, we can hang around a little bit, but there's a lot going on and a lot of people, and you're supposed to maintain distance, etc. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but I have just kind of been a fly on the wall here and there, to learn as much as I can, because I do want to not only want to be good for the final product, but I don't want to make anybody's job harder. And if you come in as a really green director, there's directors that have come on and it's been their first television episode they've ever done, and they've knocked it out of the park. And this project, other projects, etc. But then I've worked with a couple, not on this show, thankfully, but that just, you know, you can tell they're new, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it makes the days longer, and it makes the DP's job harder, and the camera guys and the grips, and so I want to make sure I'm fully prepared before I jump into that.
I mean, do you think it makes it harder for someone that's in a show to direct an episode than have a director that's not in the show direct, if you know what I mean? Because you're directing your co-stars.
Yes, I do think on one hand it is a little more difficult. You've got the rapport and you've got the relationship and the chemistry, so you can talk openly to your castmates, which is great. But it's also like, you know, when you're castmates, you're in the same boat. If you're now steering the ship, you know, I don't want to go up to Tyler and be like, hey man, I was thinking, you know, maybe you try this, and him be like, huh? You know, I want to, you always have to respect that. And I think that is a bit of a challenge for actors that direct their own shows, but I'm up to it. And I said, once I'm in that position where I feel confident, it'll definitely be something I'll do.
That is awesome. And obviously we've got plenty of episodes left. What sort of ride are we in for? Can you describe, you know, compared to season 1? I mean, season 2, it's just been amazing so far, and it's just getting better and better. I mean, what have we got ourselves in for going forward?
It's again, there's not a lot I can give away. It is. It's going to be a little bit crazier ride than even season 1, you know, coming up to what just aired, episode 7, right? So we've got we're just halfway through the season, and we're now filming episode 12, I believe. So there is some stuff coming up, and stuff in the pipeline we haven't filmed yet that is just it's gonna create a lot of moments on Twitter. It's gonna have a lot of people's, what is that, the head exploding emoji? You'll see a bunch of those on social media. So it's gonna be a ride, man.
And also, it's rumored that you've been renewed for season 3, but I don't know if that's true or not. Have you heard anything?
Man,
are you?
It's all out there. We're hopeful. We think we've done a good job, but officially there's nothing else to report as of yet.
Oh, well, we need to get a Twitter campaign and just get that season 3 announced ASAP for the fans. And also, you mentioned conventions and that you'd like to come over to the UK. A lot of the cast are coming over to the UK throughout this year through a company called Monopoly Events, and some are going to Wales Comic Con. Would you be up for that? Would you want to come over? Can we get the wheels turning with Monopoly Events to get you over with the cast? Because I think Tyler's coming over, Bitsy, you've got Jordan and Alex, and we can have time.
I'm always open to it. I one of the best things about what we do is the fan interaction in person. And again, with COVID, any of this stuff has all been virtual anyway, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but I love human interaction. I love having conversations with people face to face. And to me, it's, what we do is we get to play for a living, and we get to live in this world for a living. And somehow that impacts folks' lives. And a lot of the times we're not doctors, we're not rocket scientists, we're not any of that, but the hour that we're able to take people away from reality sometimes makes an impact. And so when I get to meet face to face with the fans and hear about stories about what they loved and what they were going through in life and why this helped, or why how they could relate to that episode or whatever, that's the reward for me. It's not the paycheck, it's not the awards, the accolades. It's getting to speak to people and seeing how it impacts them individually, face to face. So in that regard, I mean, that's one of the best things about cons, and I hope to be able to do quite a few of those down the road.
Well, fingers crossed we'll get you over to the UK. And one of my last questions, your young lad, is it Enzo, if I'm right in saying?
Enzo.
Is he a Superman or Batman fan?
It's interesting. So at his preschool, he's a Superman fan because he's literally half his life he's grown up and he knows Superman, right? Like that's his friend. Like he can literally go to school and tell his friends, yeah, my dad's friends with Superman, and he's not lying. So I think he's got one of his toys somewhere in here, sitting over there. He put that on the shelf next to a comic book that Adam Mallinger gave me for Christmas, which is awesome. But he's a Superman fan because of the association. He's been really talking a lot about Batman lately, and I think that's a product of his environment at school. And I haven't seen the Batman yet, but I'm excited.
Oh, it's fantastic! It is fantastic. I saw it a couple of weeks ago at the premiere, and it was just amazing. And I always ask people,
I feel like Robert Pattinson can really deliver in that role. I've seen the trailer, and that's it. But I feel like it's one of those roles that, again, he's pretty much made for.
It is awesome, but talking about my girls, literally, I haven't given them a choice on Batman or Superman because my 8-year-old is called Lois, and my 4-year-old is called Kara after Supergirl. So literally,
no
I have literally, my wife let me do that. I think that's great, and we've got a small cat called
my
Clark.
wife let me name my son after Enzo Ferrari. So I mean, we get some pretty good wives here, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But Erik, you've been a great guest. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I'm enjoying everything that you're doing on the show. You're a stellar actor, and literally there's been times when I've had a frog in my throat because I felt for you on screen, and it's just really nice to see these issues being dealt with on screen and not shone away from. because it is real. It does affect people, and it's quite nice that they're doing that and making the show quite real. And it's just fantastic. And I just, fingers crossed, we get a season 3, because it is, I would say, the best Superman show I've seen ever. I think it's great, and Tyler does a great job as Superman. He's a great person, and Bitsy, I met her when she was heavily pregnant. It was quite funny because she kept on having to run off to go to the toilet, bless her. But hopefully she'll be able to meet my daughter Lois in August in Wales.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait. But Erik, you look after yourself, keep safe, and stay super. But it's been great having you on.
I appreciate the kind words. Thanks for having me on, Brian.